In 2021, officers at Rome's Ciampino airport stopped a 70-year-old woman standing in the baggage line. She was about to board a flight to Malaga, Spain. When she was surrounded by the military, she did not put up any resistance. She didn't bat an eyelash when the officers blocked her and served the warrant. That woman was Maria Licciardi, and for decades, she controlled one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the planet, an empire of drugs, extortion, and blood that made grown men answer to her, and her alone. The Italian Interior Ministry called her the strategic head of a group of families that controlled a large part of organized crime in Naples. And this is the story of how she got there. On August 7, 2021, at Rome's Ciampino airport, the Italian Carabinieri's elite anti-mafia unit, the ROS, executed an arrest warrant on a woman who looked like someone's grandmother, Licciardi, 71, known as the Little One because of her small stature, was arrested while attempting to fly to Spain, apparently to visit her daughter. She had two companions with her, standing in line waiting for their baggage. Neither of them had warrants out for their arrest, but the woman between them did. She remained calm when they showed her the detention order issued by the Naples public prosecutor, who accused her of being the top element of the clan whose name she bore, and one of the leading members of the historic Mafia cartel called the Alleanza di Secondigliano. This was not the first time Maria Licciardi had been arrested. She was first arrested in 2001, but was released in 2009 after serving time for mafia-related offenses. Then, in June 2019, Italian police launched a colossal anti-Camorra operation against the Secondigliano alliance. Police arrested more than 120 members of the alliance and confiscated 130 million euros. Among those arrested were the wives of the bosses of the Bosti, Maiardo, Licciardi, and Contini clans, as well as their lieutenants, children, grandchildren, and entrepreneurs who worked for the alliance. But the one person they wanted most, the one name at the top of every list, slipped through their fingers. The historical female boss managed to escape from the arrest in the operation. For 2 years after that, Maria Licciardi was a fugitive again. She had done it before. In the late 1990s, Licciardi was added on the 30 most wanted Italians list and went into hiding. Thanks to a sophisticated network of protection set up by her clan, Licciardi was able to evade capture for 2 years, and despite having changed her refuge several times, never left the Masseria Cardone district. She ran an entire criminal empire from a neighborhood she never left. When people think of mafia bosses, they think of men: Al Capone, Pablo Escobar, Lucky Luciano, John Gotti. Men have dominated the history of organized crime as bosses, capos, soldiers, and associates. They traditionally relegated women to servile roles. America's La Cosa Nostra and Sicily's Mafia are old-style patriarchies. American crime families have been men-only clubs, and women can't be made. In the movies, women play the wives, the girlfriends, the mothers. They cook, they clean, they raise children. Maria Licciardi was none of those things, or rather, she was all of them, and then she became a boss. Not an acting boss, not a stand-in. She was one of the most powerful bosses of the Camorra in the city of Naples. From 1993 until her arrest in 2001, she ordered murders, she orchestrated alliances, she bombed a prosecutor's office, and even from a prison cell, she kept pulling the strings. This is the story of how a woman from a Neapolitan suburb rewrote the rules of organized crime and became the most dangerous mafia boss most people have never heard of. To understand Maria Licciardi, you first need to understand where she came from. Not just the family, but the place itself. Naples, Italy, is the home of the Camorra, a group of savvy, ruthless, organized criminal clans that try to work together but have a history of deadly internal clashes. The Camorra is not the Sicilian Mafia. It is not the 'Ndrangheta of Calabria. It is its own beast, older, in many ways more chaotic, a network of dozens of clans fighting for territory, for drug routes, for survival. Where the Sicilian Mafia has a clear pyramid of command, the Camorra is a constellation of competing families, each with their own territory, their own soldiers, and their own code. And in the northern suburbs of Naples, in a gritty, densely packed district called Secondigliano, the Licciardi family was royalty. Licciardi was born and raised in the Neapolitan suburb of Secondigliano, a traditional stronghold of the Licciardi clan. Her entire family belonged to the Camorra. Her father was a well-known guapo or local boss. A guapo in Neapolitan culture is not just a criminal, it is a neighborhood strongman, someone who settles disputes, provides jobs, and earns loyalty from the locals. Think of it as a feudal lord operating in a 20th century city. The Licciardis were entrenched in this world. Every member of Maria's family either served the clan or led it. One of her brothers, Gennaro Licciardi, known as a Signa, the monkey, was a very powerful guapo who later became the head of the clan, and a founding member of the Secondigliano alliance. The Secondigliano alliance originally consisted of the Licciardi clan and the Contini clan from Naples, and the Maiardo clan from Giuliano. It was initiated by Gennaro Licciardi, who built his clan in the early 1990s in Secondigliano. The alliance included Edoardo Contini and Francesco Malardo, and dominated the Neapolitan underworld during the 1990s. This was not a casual partnership. This was a calculated merger of criminal enterprises, three families pooling their resources, their soldiers, their drug routes, to dominate every racket in Naples. Heroin, cocaine, cigarette smuggling, extortion, public works contract fraud. The Secondigliano alliance was, by any measure, one of the most formidable criminal organizations in European history. The Secondigliano alliance is a strategic alliance of Camorra clans controlling drug trafficking and extortion rackets in many areas of Naples since the 1990s. It is considered by law enforcement authorities to be one of the two most powerful criminal organizations within the Camorra. And it was built by Maria Licciardi's brother. But here is where the story shifts. The Italian government, throughout the 1980s and 1990s, waged an aggressive, relentless war against organized crime. There was a strong push in the 1990s to clamp down on organized crime, and a lot more men were put in prison. That created a vacuum where women stepped into those roles. Across Italy, the old guard was crumbling. Bosses were being captured, informants were turning, and prosecutors were getting bolder. According to the investigative news website Transcrime, while Italian courts indicted only one female boss in 1989, they indicted 89 of them in 1995. The entire landscape of the Italian underworld was being reshaped, not by revolution, but by attrition, and nobody stepped into the chaos more decisively than Maria Licciardi. Licciardi rose to power and took over as head of the clan after her two brothers, Pietro and Vincenzo, and her husband were arrested. She was the first female Camerista to become the boss of the Licciardi clan and take over as head of the Secondigliano alliance. Her brother Gennaro had died in prison in 1994. The death of Gennaro Licciardi caused some disruption in the local underworld, as well as several bloody attempts to seize control, but the clan was kept in stable condition by Maria. Think about that for a moment. Her brother, the founder of the entire alliance, dies. Her other brothers are in prison. Her husband is in prison. Rival clans see an opportunity. They circle like wolves. In any normal succession crisis in the Camorra, the result would be a bloodbath, a complete collapse, or a hostile takeover by a rival family. None of that happened. Maria held the line. Maria Licciardi did not merely maintain what her brothers had built. She expanded it. She refined it. She made it something far more sophisticated than it had ever been before. She brought together a fragile, informal coalition of 20 Camorra clans in order to expand control of the city's most lucrative rackets, from drugs and cigarette smuggling to protection and prostitution. She also played a key role in expanding the city's drug trade market. Under her leadership, the Secondigliano alliance became more organized, secretive, sophisticated, and consequently more powerful. 20 clans. Think about the sheer force of personality, the strategic brilliance, the raw intimidation it takes to convince 20 rival criminal organizations, each with their own hierarchy, their own grudges, their own ambitions, to work together under one banner. And not just any banner, under her banner. Following one of the bloodiest mafia wars in living memory, she also formed an alliance between the Camorra clans, convincing her fellow leaders that cooperation was more profitable than war. This wasn't brute force. This was diplomacy. Criminal diplomacy. Yes, but diplomacy nonetheless. Maria understood something that many of her male predecessors had not, that endless turf wars were bad for business. Dead soldiers, burned drug supply, police crackdowns. These were liabilities, not assets. She preached a gospel of cooperation, of shared profit margins, of territorial agreements, and she backed it up with cold, calculated enforcement. Licciardi was referred to as La Madrina, the godmother, by fellow Camorristi, and earned the nickname La Piccolina, the little girl, early on in her criminal career, due to her diminutive height. Among Camorra women, she is known respectfully as La Principessa, the princess, due to her good standing. 3 names, 3 different reputations. To her soldiers, she was the godmother, the authority, the final word. To her enemies, she was the little girl, an underestimation they made at their own peril. And to the women of the neighborhood, she was the princess, respected, revered, feared. According to police sources, she was reputed to be practical, charming, exceptionally intelligent, but just as ruthless as her male counterparts. She carried a cold and calculating approach in her criminal endeavors, reportedly taking her inspiration from Rosetta Cutolo, sister of Raffaele Cutolo, the boss of the Nuova Camorra Organizzata. Rosetta Cutolo was an earlier prototype, a woman who had stepped in for her imprisoned brother, and demonstrated that women could wield real power in the Camorra. Maria took that template and perfected it. Where Rosetta was a placeholder, Maria was a transformer. She didn't just keep the family business running, she restructured it from the ground up. Perhaps the most important change was the involvement in the prostitution trade. Prior to this, the Camorra had a code of conduct that forbade them from making money from prostitution. However, under Licciardi, this code was broken. The Camorra would buy the girls from the Albanian Mafia for $2,000. Many of them came on the promise of legitimate work in order to escape the crushing poverty of their homeland. But once they arrived, they were practically enslaved and forced into prostitution by the Camorra. Many such girls were underage. They were often put on drugs. This was the dark heart of Maria Licciardi's empire. She shattered a code that even hardened criminals had respected for generations. She turned human suffering into a revenue stream, buying women and girls from Eastern Europe and Nigeria, promising them a better life in Italy, and then trapping them in a cycle of exploitation that funded her organization's expansion. The women who were trafficked had no way out. They were drugged to ensure dependence. This helped increase criminal activity, as they usually spent a large part of their income purchasing narcotics for consumption. It was a closed loop of exploitation. The trafficked women earned money for the clan through prostitution, and then spent that money buying drugs from the clan. Maria Licciardi had built a machine that fed on itself, and through it all, she remained a ghost. Unlike many male Camorristi, Licciardi shunned the limelight and was never convicted or even suspected of any crime. For years, authorities did not even know who she was. For so long, the Italian judicial system didn't think women were smart enough to actually commit the crimes. Women flew under the radar for a long time. Maria didn't just fly under the radar, she weaponized invisibility. While her male counterparts paraded their wealth, their cars, their flashy lifestyles, she operated in the shadows. A grandmother in a neighborhood of concrete towers, issuing orders that echoed across an entire city. Every empire has a fracture point. For Maria Licciardi, it came in the spring of 1999, in the form of a shipment of heroin from Istanbul. In 1999, when a large shipment of heroin arrived from Istanbul so pure that it was deadly, Licciardi ordered clans not to sell it. This was a calculated decision. She understood that if addicts began dying in large numbers, public outrage would follow. Police crackdowns would intensify, and the entire alliance's drug business would be jeopardized. It was a cold equation, not born from compassion, but from commerce. Dead customers are bad for long-term revenue, but not everyone agreed with her. The Lo Russo clan, who had always chafed under her leadership, disagreed and packaged the shipment for sale on the street. The Lo Russos had long resented taking orders from a woman. They saw the pure heroin as an opportunity. Higher quality meant higher prices, meant faster profits. They ignored Maria's decree. The consequences were catastrophic. The sale of the packets of unrefined heroin resulted in the deaths of many drug addicts across Naples, 11 of whom died in April 1999 alone. This caused great public outrage and resulted in massive police crackdowns on the Camorra clans. Many Camorristi were arrested and subsequently imprisoned. Everything Maria had predicted came true. The dead addicts made front-page news. Citizens demanded action. Police swept through the neighborhoods of northern Naples, arresting clan members by the dozen. The delicate web of cooperation that Maria had spent years weaving was torn apart in a matter of weeks. The Lo Russo clan eventually split from the alliance, leading to disintegration and a bloody gang war, including the use of car bombs and bazooka attacks. Clans began fighting over turf and attempted to destroy or take other clans' business. When 4 clan members were murdered in her stronghold of Secondigliano, Licciardi was forced to retaliate. Car bombs, bazooka attacks. This was not a street-level turf dispute. This was a full-scale war, playing out in the densely populated neighborhoods of a European city. The two groups turned on each other, and over 120 people died. In car bombings, shootings, and other violence, 120 people, soldiers, associates, bystanders, caught in the crossfire of a war, triggered by a single shipment of heroin that Maria Licciardi had been wise enough to know would bring ruin. And then she escalated even further. In January 2001, she bombed the office building of senior prosecutor Luigi Bobbio. The bombing was delivered as a warning to stop the investigation of her clan's activities and also to stop any further prosecution of her clan members. A sitting prosecutor, a bomb, in his office. This was a direct challenge to the Italian state, the kind of brazen escalation that brought to mind the anti-mafia wars of the early 1990s, when prosecutors Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino were assassinated by the Sicilian Mafia in massive bomb blasts. Maria Licciardi was not making quiet moves anymore. She was cornered. Her alliance was fragmenting, and she was fighting for survival. The woman who had preached cooperation and profit-sharing was now ordering bombings, and all the while the police were closing in. Neapolitan police came after her with an arrest warrant in 1999. Police raided the meeting of 13 mafia bosses and arrested them, but Licciardi eluded the cops. She vanished into the narrow streets of Secondigliano, protected by a network so loyal and so deeply embedded in the neighborhood that Italian authorities with all their resources could not find her. While on the lam, she continued as the undisputed boss of the Licciardi clan and ordered several murders of rival mobsters. Being a fugitive did not slow her down. She ran her organization from hiding, communicating through trusted intermediaries, issuing orders that carried the weight of finality. She went to war with the Giuliano clan of Forcella, which was headed by another female Camorra boss, Erminia Giuliano, who took control after the arrest of her brother, Luigi Giuliano. 2 women, both Camorra bosses, both commanding rival clans, locked in a battle for supremacy in the streets of Naples. It was a scene that would have been unimaginable a generation earlier. The end came in 2001, not with a dramatic raid, but with a traffic stop. She went into hiding until officers pulled a car over outside Naples and recognized her in it in 2001. After years of evading authorities, after the bombings and the murders and the gang wars, Maria Licciardi was caught because officers recognized her face through a car window. She was found guilty of being the leader of a Camorra clan founded by her brothers and handed 12 years and 8 months in jail. But prison did not end her reign. Although in prison, she still commanded the clan. Prisons do not represent a barrier for the Camorra. According to Anna Maria Zaccaria, a sociologist at the University of Naples Federico II, in 2009, Anna Maria Zaccaria told the Associated Press, "She's in prison, but she still commands." In 2009, Licciardi was released from prison after almost 8 years. She returned to Secondigliano, and the cycle began again. On 26th of June 2019, Licciardi managed to escape from a huge anti-Camorra operation against the Secondigliano alliance. Becoming a fugitive, over 120 of her associates were arrested. 13 million euro was seized, but Maria, once again, disappeared. For 2 more years, she was free. Then came August 7th, 2021, and the baggage line at Ciampino Airport. She didn't bat an eyelash when the officers blocked her and served the warrant. In 2023, an Italian court sentenced her to 12 years and 8 months in prison. And even now, her shadow looms over Naples. An investigation called Malachim portrayed the Licciardi clan as the hegemonic power in northern Naples, and its province following the arrest of its historic leader, Maria Licciardi. Deputy Prosecutor Sergio Amato emphasized, the clan's branches remained operational despite the repeated arrests of its leaders, a sign of a deeply rooted criminal structure ready to reorganize. Licciardi inspired the authors of the popular TV series Gomorrah to create the character of Scianel, a cruel and fearless female mafia boss. And the character, like its real-life inspiration, is compelling. precisely because it shatters every assumption about who holds power in the criminal underworld. The story of Maria Licciardi is not a story about a woman who filled a man's shoes. It is a story about a woman who remade the shoes entirely. She took a fractured, war-torn landscape of competing clans and forged it into a unified criminal empire. She introduced new rackets that other bosses would never have touched. She controlled drug routes spanning from Turkey to the Netherlands to Spain. She bombed a prosecutor's office. She commanded an army from hiding. She went to prison, got out, went on the run, got caught, and went to prison again. And her organization never stopped operating. When the Pentito Gaetano Guida was asked in court about the women of the Second Digliano Alliance, his answer was definitive. They are on the front line. In other words, they constitute the backbone of the organization. In Italy alone, though women make up only 2.5% of those sent to prison for mafia-linked crimes, they control around a third of all mafia financial resources. The numbers tell a story that the history books have been slow to acknowledge. The women of organized crime were never just on the sidelines. They were managing the money, passing the messages, distributing the orders. And in the case of Maria Licciardi, they were running everything. She stood barely 5 feet tall. Her fellow Camorristi called her the little girl. The Italian state put her on the most wanted list twice. One well-connected insider described her as radiating a steely charisma. The prosecutors who built cases against her described her as one of the most dangerous criminals in Italy's history. And as of the last confirmed reports, the organization she built and led continues to operate. With or without her presence, she's the most dangerous mafia boss, and most of the world never even knew her name.